Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family. I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Matt, we have an exciting episode this week. It is episode 213, and we are reviewing Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Starring Godzilla, King Kong, Scar King, Little Mini Baby Kong, Mothra, as well as Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Dan Stevens as the Dr. Doolittle, and Kaylee Hoddle. Written and directed by Adam Wingard, who was for Godzilla vs. Kong, VHS 1 and 2, The Guest, and Death Note. It's also written by Terry Rosario, who wrote Godzilla vs. Kong, Aladdin, and Shrek, The Road to El Dorado, Pirates of the Caribbean 1 through 5, The Lone Ranger, The Mask of Zorro, and Deja Vu, and Simon Barrett, who also wrote VHS 1 through 3 and The Guest. And written by Jeremy Slater, who did the 2015 Fantastic Four, Death Note, the creator of the Exorcist TV series, and the creator of Moon Knight, and the creator of the Umbrella Academy. So, man, there's a lot of people to write this one movie. But Matt,
Yes.
the only way we can do this movie, you have a very special guest for us, and from what I'm told, you say you have a story. So I'm very curious. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. You said I have a speech prepared. Is actually what you said to me.
I have a speech. Yeah, yes, Ernesto, because for certain guests there needs a certain introduction that needs to be bestowed on certain guests, and I'm so excited to have this guest on the show because it's been a long time coming. Well, at least I have been trying to get him on for about a year now, and he's like, we'll see. It had to be the right movie. And this was the one, for sure. Gracing us with his presence today is a mentor of many, but a coach to only a lucky few. He is the basketball legend out on these streets, but some might know him from his announcing days. Shout out if you do. He is the Godzilla expert who is waiting for the day that Anguirus gets his moment to shine again on the big screen. He is the host of the Random Thoughts and Best Regards podcast. He is the brilliant. He is the talented TODD Todd Buono. Hello and welcome to the show.
Holler at me. Good job, Matt. Ernesto, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you, man. That was quite an intro, sir.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to write that?
It took me about maybe 30 minutes to write it, and then I had to practice it. I had to
okay.
like that was
front of the mirror.
30, I was in the mirror. I was like 30 minutes. I'm like, I got to get this right, because then I read it a few times. Like I'm stumbling. I can't stumble when I'm doing this introduction. I gotta be perfect. So
well, I definitely I appreciate that.
You're
it's a pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks
we're so glad to have you. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Matt's been hyping you up, saying that you are the expert.
Well, hopefully I can deliver.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh no, I know that. I know Todd has a lot of thoughts on this. I just know we purposely haven't really talked about the movie because he was coming on the show.
My first thought out of the gate here is how has Ernesto put up with you for 213 minutes? But I'm sure there's other more pertinent questions that we need to answer.
Oh, for sure. Especially in regards with this episode. We need to there's a lot of questions. I know Ernesto, we briefly spoke right before we recorded, and I know he has a lot of questions himself about this movie. So let's dive right into it.
What do you got for me? What do you got? Come on.
Yeah. We're going to be diving into our spoiler review of Godzilla x Kong, A New Empire. Todd, you are a special guest. We're going to start with you as you continue to bounce around. Ernesto, you're doing a great job of keeping it on track.
It's the beauty of the internet. Sorry.
So do you want to just give you quick thoughts off the top?
Yeah,
what I thought?
give us your opening statements, and then we're going to go around and we're going to have a full discussion.
And to get Ernesto up to speed, because to be fair, Matt's had the opportunity to have conversations with me leading into the movie and things of that nature. But so one thing I definitely wanted was I wanted this. It had to be different than -1, right? It had to be different than Godzilla -1. We didn't need another dramatic Godzilla movie. We needed this one to be batshit crazy. And it was.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I thought it was genuinely a good movie. There were a few mistakes. Legendary still hasn't got the sizing thing right, but I also think maybe at this point they're just going with it, and they're like, hey, watch this. 1 minute he's going to fit inside the Roman Coliseum, and the next minute, he's going to be as big as, Brazil. But they'll get there eventually.
That's actually a good point. I didn't even realize. It's funny. Like, I didn't even realize that was a thing until you just brought it up. I was like, oh yeah.
Also, if you notice, the first time he comes out of the Roman Coliseum, he knocks part of the wall down, and then later on, when he goes back for his nap, it's intact and it's fine. But again, there's little things, but I'll be honest. Like I said, there were a few mistakes, but I can overlook them. What I wanted this to be, and what I hoped for, and what I was really happy was it. To me, it was a callback to the Showa era. And quickly, for those who don't know, there's different eras to Godzilla. The Showa era was 1954 to 1975. You have the Heisei era, which was 84 to 95. And then you have the Millennium, which was 2000 to 04. Now, the current one is MonsterVerse. But the Showa era was kind of the goofy movies where, Godzilla was picking up Anguirus and hitting him with his tail to go knock out, another monster or another Titan, or you had Godzilla fly into the air with a drop kick. This time we got a suplex. We got a WWE suplex on Kong, which was absolutely fantastic. But so it really was a callback to the Showa era, which I was happy they did it. Because again, I think that if you're a true Godzilla fan, and even if you're not a old school Godzilla fan, I still think you can enjoy this movie. But if you are a big Godzilla buff and you're kind of old school, you definitely felt that Showa vibe. And I appreciate Wingard going with that and doing that. I actually, and Matt, you know this, normally when I talk about Godzilla movies, what's the one thing I always say? I don't need the human story, right? I need monsters fighting. Yep. That's all I needed. That's why King of the Monsters was a gem, because I just needed monsters fighting. I don't need the human element. But I will say this time, they actually did a really decent job with the storytelling. And if we're being honest, right, Godzilla needs humans to showcase the impact of his actions, right? And the depths of their characters kind of help with that. So if there's no human interaction, then you don't really understand like the impact of these giant nuclear monsters. But overall, I honestly, of the Legendary films, is definitely my second favorite one. Nothing is going to touch King of the Monsters. Tremendously better than Kong. And I'm not even saying that Godzilla versus Kong was bad, but just a tremendous, to me, step back in the right direction after Godzilla versus Kong.
Ernesto, your thoughts?
To be honest, we had a good time. I took my two older boys, and then Julian, his stepdad, Kirk, friend of the show, he came as well, and it was just a really fun time. Like
it's fun,
yeah,
right?
It was just fun. Like, I mean, not everything. I don't need every movie to be Oppenheimer. Like, like you could.
Amen. No, right. Amen. Yes.
And then I tell Matt all the time, like, certain movies that are considered bad, like if my kids enjoy them and we have a good time, then I'm gonna have a good time, because that's what we're there to do. We're here to just watch this, have a good time. This is just like CGI monsters with Godzilla with his robot arm. Like, whatever. Who cares? Like, it's fun. I like that. I like the little storyline that they set for little baby Kong. Like, I felt like they gave him an arc to kind of prove himself, and he was building his relationship with Kong, and and I think it just seems like you were mentioning the human story. Like, I felt like there wasn't a lot of it, but I did feel that where they did kind of hit a point was like showing characters through nonverbal communication, kind of calling back to the character who is deaf, kind of really playing to that. Like, they told a lot of the story through just like nonverbal movement, like all of the Middle Earth, that we didn't get any like magical Kong language. Like, you just through their actions and what was happening in the scene, you kind of inferred. I did want more from Scar. Like, I would have liked to have seen him, how he got that little shard from that monster, just being like, hey, look, I got you. Like, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, you're my prisoner. Like that was a badass monster. Like, I would have loved to have seen that fight.
Yeah. We didn't get a backstory there. And then, interesting enough, right, with Shimu, from what I understand, again, Shimu was actually a scrapped Toho character that was never used.
Oh,
and which one is that one? Is that like the little ice Godzilla?
That was the dragon. Okay. That was the one that Scar
was the ice dragon.
Was controlling.
Okay.
The ice dragon. So I believe they took their own. They obviously modernized it and made their own take on Shimu. But from what I understand, that was a callback to a Toho character where the puppet and the suit and everything were actually made, and then Toho just scrapped it. They never used it.
It was a cool monster. I thought that was a cool. Yeah. I thought it was a cool addition to kind of like the. And I have just kind of like a side note. Have you watched Monarch, which is linked to this universe as well? Now, do you think watching Monarch did it give you better context in the things that were happening in this film?
So, that's interesting, Ernesto. I don't know if it gave me better context to things happening in this film, but I will say this, because I know it's weird. Monarch kind of has there's kind of like a weird reaction to it. So people either love it or hate it. But I do think one thing that it did very well overall for the entire like MonsterVerse, I thought they did a very good job of, I think at 2014 Godzilla, there was a lot of holes or gaps that needed to be filled or closed going into King of the Monsters. And then also when you get to the end of it, I feel that maybe if, depending on season 2 goes, they'll explain to us a little bit more of how we got from San Francisco to King of the Monsters to Kong. So maybe to directly answer your question, yes, maybe it helped bring it more current. I don't know if I needed it maybe for any context in this particular movie, but maybe to understand Kong's role in things.
Yeah, I do wish they would have given us maybe
they'll finally explain Apex, because as I told Matt, Apex just showed up like in Kong versus Godzilla. It's like all of a sudden Monarch, and then it's like, oh, Apex, what is this? There was never any explanation to it. So maybe in season 2 they'll get to that. But I do think it did a good job of kind of building a bridge. I used this in a conversation with Matt before. I feel like Monarch did a good job of building a bridge from the first Godzilla, the 2014 Godzilla, which kind of stood separate from the franchise, if I'm being honest, or at least felt different from the franchise. I felt Monarch at least has brought that closer to the family and tied made a not the best continuity bridge, but a continuity bridge nonetheless.
There's
it's there. A little one, but it's
the link is
okay.
there.
Like after watching Monarch, I was like, oh, I guess I can watch Godzilla and see the connective tissue there. But I think you can also watch Monarch with really no ties with the original Godzilla, and like a bigger tie was with Kong Skull Island. That was a lot of ties between that and Monarch. But as far as Godzilla X Kong, I also had a blast watching this movie, because I think we talked about this a lot, Ernesto. It's like your expectation going into it. If you know the type of movie that this is going to be and you expect this movie to be what it is, just lean into it and just have a good time with it. I'm not going into this movie for the story. That's not what I'm here for. And I'm actually surprised.
Exactly.
That's not what we want. Exactly. And what I was quite surprised was that we got a pretty decent one. And it was even better than I think it was a lot better than Godzilla versus Kong in terms of
the story was way better.
Yeah. And you have,
it was more coherent too. The Godzilla versus Kong story was not as coherent.
And also the humans in the movie served less of a purpose in Godzilla minus Kong. It's like they were there, but they were like, I really don't care what's happening.
Traction now, Godzilla minus Kong. What's going
on? You like? It feels like you were thinking about -1, but meant to say verse.
Would you blame me for thinking about Godzilla minus
one? Well, of course
not. Nothing's getting by me, man.
Yeah. He's listening for every word. But Godzilla versus Kong, I feel like there was a lot of plot holes in it. Again, one of those movies where we are just looking for the big fights. We're just looking to see Godzilla versus Kong, as the title suggests. But this movie, honestly, it wasn't that at all. I anticipate, like, how do you top, two titans going at each other? And I think they found a way to do it that made sense to me.
Part of the monster
like
family.
You have Kong. Yeah, you have Kong living in Hollow Earth. You have Godzilla just roaming the Earth, just taking out titans left and right.
Sleeping in the Coliseum.
Sleeping in the Coliseum. Listen, making land speed time. My man swam across the Mediterranean just to whoop Kong again. He said, F this bridge, F that bridge. That was one of my favorite parts when he was smashing the bridges. My man swam across the Mediterranean. Kong stuck his little head out, and he was on.
I'm sorry.
Egypt, and he said nope. And he said, and how many times
he gave him the business?
How many times does Kong? Listen, how many times does Godzilla have to stomp on Kong's chest before somebody last time, not because he's a good guy, but last time he needed Mechagodzilla to save him, and this time he needed the beautiful Mothra to save him from getting whooped. But to you guys, both of your points, I honestly, that movie was fun, and I think we live in a day and an age where everything has to be serious, everything has to have a meaning, and especially coming off of, and listen, I love -1, but -1 was that deep introspective Godzilla movie where I like to say that movie was more about Japanese culture and statements and things like that, featuring Godzilla. There was so much more going on in that movie. It just happened to feature Godzilla. So that was a very different take. I can appreciate it. This is what a Godzilla movie should be. This Godzilla and Kong is what I truly feel a Godzilla movie should be. It should be fun. You should laugh. You should be able to take family, friends, like you said, Ernesto, your kids. I went and saw it with my son, and you kind of just keep it going.
Yeah.
Like, again, I started watching Godzilla movies when I was little, and it's a generational thing that keeps going. It's fun. I think we also talked about, right? I always say I want fights, right? Matt, I say I want the big monster fights.
We got them.
I was trying to keep track, right? I think there were about 8, and I could be wrong, but I was trying to think back to some of the other movies, and I was like, the only thing I could kind of compare it to is I was like, I think it comes pretty damn close to Godzilla Final Wars, which was in 2004. They had about 10 fights. This one had a lot of fights. Some of them didn't last that long, but they still happened, and I appreciated that.
Do you count like the first time we see Kong and he was fighting those? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When he ripped one apart and then all of his guts just.
Yeah. Like I said, some of them didn't last long. Yeah. There's a lot of green gook going on.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah. I thought it was fun that Kong was setting traps.
Yeah.
I was like, look at this guy. I mean, he's out. You could tell he's been in Hollow Earth for a while. He's like, I have a lot of time to kill. I'm going to set these traps in case someone tries to hurt me. And I was quite surprised. Like, man, I mean, I knew he was smart, obviously, but like, you went from one moment.
Well, I don't know. He might be dumb. He keeps picking fights with Godzilla.
Yeah.
It's like, did you not learn?
I'm not sure how smart he is, but go ahead, continue.
But then, like, he's setting traps, and all of a sudden he goes back to Earth because he has a toothache. Like, it's just like, what's happening right now?
I have to tell you, Dan Stevens was like a highlight for the movie for me. Like, I thought he was so
addition to the cast.
Like, I would love to see like a little mini spinoff of just his adventures of like helping monsters. Like, oh look, you got a big ass thorn in your wing. Let me get that out, or you know what I mean? Like, he was awesome.
Yeah, he was a great addition to the cast.
Yeah, that was a big step up from like, not bringing back Millie Bobby Brown was a great choice because she served, and that whole storyline with Brian Tyree Henry did not serve anything to Godzilla minus. I said it again. Godzilla versus Kong, but they brought him back, and I think he had a little bit more to do, even though the entire times. Go ahead.
No. You're right. Go ahead, finish, because I think we're going to be on the same.
Yeah, I do think that as far as the human angle is concerned, after they reached the secret tribe that was living in Hollow Earth, once we got there, the only time they spoke were just to give exposition of what was happening in the Titan world. That was their only job. There's like, here's drawings on the wall. Well, we're going to read that. We have to go to the bottom of the Hollow Earth, or because that's where we have to do this thing, and then the little girl has to go up in here because that's what the prophecy says. And like that's the whole rest of the movie was just them talk, and the rest. And when you weren't listening to them talk about like explaining what the movie's doing, you had the fights that was happening.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think that was a fair balance.
I think right. So Bernie and Trapper's characters, I think they added something to it because we never really had that. We haven't had that chemistry. Like, really, to be honest, of the cast, we never really had that on-screen chemistry where you have the conspiracy theorists, right, in Bernie, and then you have the happy-go-lucky, having fun, enjoy life Trapper. I thought they balanced each other really well. Again, I think Trapper's character, as we talked about it being in addition to the cast, right, Ernesto? I think Trapper's character helped Bernie's character tremendously.
Yes,
and I think it was a great dynamic, and I think it helped out a lot.
I 100% agree. I mean, even the fact that they gave Brian Tyree Henry's character, the fact that they actually gave him something to do, and he's having him deal with the stakes of the fallout from Godzilla versus Kong, where nobody believes him. They see him as this crazy kook online, just talking, like, and then he's given the opportunity to showcase. I would have liked at the end to maybe see like at least a preview of him either working on it to release his documentary or at least what he was going to do with that, because they gave us a lot of buildup of him going through that and not being heard and not being seen, and then him recording his documentary and his adventures down there. But at the end, we didn't really get, even if it was like a 2-minute, like a 10-second thing of, hey, my documentary's coming out here, or I'm premiering on this one. I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more closure on that part of the story.
Yeah, that's
also not Godzilla in the background. That's my son.
No, that's okay. he's adding to the ambiance. That's fine.
I think also that like I feel like if they were to continue his character in another movie, they would probably introduce to what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they would probably introduce his character in the next movie with him like releasing the documentary.
Okay, that's fair.
Like they definitely set him up for the like to be in the next installments if they were to bring him back.
He's fantastic. I mean, I love it. I mean, he's a favorite of mine. Everything he's in, I really enjoy everything that he does. So I look forward to see his continuation into the MonsterVerse.
Here's something too that I think is a good way to gauge. I think it's a good way to gauge a Godzilla movie sometimes, and if it's good or bad, and or not even that. Just I think for me it's a good way to gauge it. I don't know if you guys know this, but if we're keeping track, I believe Godzilla's screen time was only about 15 minutes.
It wasn't long at all.
But the key is, and I've always said this, I don't care. He doesn't have to be on screen all the time. It just has to be impactful when he is. And I thought they did a good job. I thought every scene he was in, they did a good enough job of carrying and making it, making you not like, oh, where's Godzilla?
I agree. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, especially within the story, like because basically they just kept saying that he's charging up, he's revving up because he feels something big is going to happen. While they always went to Kong. And I feel like more so than Godzilla versus Kong, this felt like more like Kong's movie.
This definitely felt like a Kong movie.
Yeah, and he was the driving force of all of the story that was being put here. And like they set it up, he's lonely, and then he runs into these little ape goons, and then
ape goons.
Had a good time watching. He tossed around that mini Kong, and
that was great.
He picked him up and just slapped everybody around.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
Dude, I was laughing so hard with that, and it was great. And it reminded me a little bit, again, for my longtime Godzilla fans, it reminded me a little bit of when Godzilla had Son of Godzilla, Manila. He didn't always treat him the best, and that kind of reminded me a little bit of that. I thought that was a callback to that, but yeah, when he picked him up and started using him as a weapon, I was like, this is fantastic. Good job.
Smacking him around. It kind of felt like Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think? Because I know, Matt, right, in the previews and everything, I know you are not a fan, at least seemed in the moment you were not a fan of Kong having his Iron Man arm. How did you think that was handled? Because I actually was okay with the way it was handled. I thought there was a reason for it. They gave us a reason for it.
Yeah. What's funny though is that I really wish they never showed us the Iron Man arm in the previews. Like right now it's in the poster. It was the first thing you saw in the trailer of this giant mechanical arm attached to Kong. And I don't know, maybe it was unavoidable. Maybe you could be, with all the shots they were showing, like maybe you had to show it, but I would have loved to just kind of sit there and be like, look how ridiculous this movie is of it. They gave him,
I mean, it was ridiculous at times.
But
they gave him a robot arm, because at this point I was expecting is like he's gonna hurt his hand somehow, and then he's gonna get. So I was anticipating a moment where he was going to need it, and then it happened. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then like it gave him a leg up, which I guess that when you think about it, it's like, okay, well, Godzilla or Kong would not have defeated Godzilla at all without it. I mean, hell, he had it with him, and he still couldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, it's still goofy. It's still really, really, really wacky.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, whatever. It didn't matter in the moment. It was kind of like a little bit out there in the trailer, but when you see it in the theater, you're like, all right, sure. Of course they have. Of course they were working on weapons to help the Titans defeat the Titans, and like, sure.
But I think they had
I think it's also funny that they were like, Godzilla never needs anything. He's good. He's just gonna charge up somewhere for about half a day, and he's good.
Show up and we'll pass. Yep.
But I think they had to, because of it happened so early in the movie. So anything in the trailer is like literally unavoidable, because you're either gonna stare at that or his like frostbite hand.
Yeah. What do you think about the introduction of Scar King, Todd? Like, how do you think it worked as a villain?
It was all right. He was okay. I wasn't crazy about it in general, but so again, too, right? Going into the movie, I was not crazy. I was not feeling hype about the Scar King character. I do understand a little bit the business side of that. Legendary Warner Brothers, they don't want to constantly pay Toho for every character that they put in their movie. And if they can create characters that they can license and get the marketing for and everything else, I understand that. But I just wasn't crazy about I was like, how's it going to be how's this orangutan going to be menacing to Kong and Godzilla? I thought they did a good job of at least making it seem viable. Again, too, he had a larger monster, or a more threatening monster that he was controlling, which is kind of what you and I had talked about leading into the movie, Matt. I said, I kind of feel like Scar King is a red herring, and there's something else behind that. And we got it with Shimu. I thought it was all right. I mean, you know me, Matt. I want Gigan. Like, let's get to it. Let's get to Gigan. I know Wingard said if he does do another one, he wants it to be very much in the Godzilla versus Destroyer kind of. So we may see Destroyer, we may see Gigan, but I thought they did all right with Scar King. I mean, I loved watching him get thrown over Brazil. That was fun. Also, right, with the sizing, too. When he got to Brazil, he was gigantic. I was like, whoa.
I just, the only thing I like...
Is Rio small? Like is Rio, is it not the size of the rest of the places in the world? I don't know.
I do feel like...
I've never been, so...
I guess we'll have to go and find out.
Yeah, exactly.
I might be really tall there. I don't know.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't really care for in the villain, I thought his introduction was really good. I felt like he had that menacing presence because like he was controlling all the other apes around him. It felt like to the people he was controlling, as well as Shimu, he was a threat. And obviously he was able to use that to kind of temporarily damage Kong in the process, who up until that moment he was like kicking ass the entire time. But then when it came to like, and then once it came to the final battle in Brazil, and the whole point of the movie was for him to no longer have control over Shimu. As soon as that happened, I just felt that was just so quick. Like that was his only, like, you got rid of his superpower, and then that was it. So like You're telling me after all these years, him being trapped in Hollow Earth because Godzilla trapped him, is like the only thing you had that made you strong was controlling somebody else. Like you didn't have any other like tricks up your sleeve to like at least stay in the fight for about at least another 5 more minutes.
Hey, riddle me this. What were they doing down there? What were the rest of the orangutans doing down there? What were they enslaved? Like, what was he having them do? Like, we never got an explanation. They're just
moving rocks.
But yeah, like, what was the end game? What was the goal? Like, I mean, they found a wormhole in like 5 seconds. I don't understand. He's been down there for hundreds of years. So yeah, that part, like I said, there were some things, but I'm willing to turn a blind eye. I'm like, all right, give me a monster fight. I'm distracted.
To your point, how did Mini Kong and the other goons get out?
That's what I mean. When they finally got out, they found it so quickly. I'm like, well, that's cool.
And then he's riding Shimu like a he's like just bringing this thing around. He's like over here. That's where the humans are.
Keep going.
Todd, I gotta ask your girl, your Mothra, coming in this movie.
How that was sexy. Oh man, that was sexy. I popped right away. So I kind of had a feeling. So I thought, right? So in one of the previews leading in, I was like, that's her essence. Like I saw the gold falling, and I was like, my girl's coming back. So I wasn't completely shocked when she showed up. I also kind of felt that Jaya's character was, even from way back, even when we first met her, I was like, she is going to be the key to unlocking. Even though she was the Kong Whisperer, I was like, no. She's going to be the one who brings Mothra back to us. She's going to be, not one of the twins, but in that line where she's going to be out there, Mothra. So, and then we got her, and I do love, one of my favorite parts of the movies was when she flies up there, and she just looks at Kong, and Kong's literally like, all right. She's literally like, Godzilla. She's like, Godzilla, stop whooping his ass, and Godzilla's like,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Complete control over Godzilla. I love it. I'm so happy she's back. I'll tell you another reason, though, why I'm even happier she's back, right? Because start putting this together, Matt. Every great franchise, right? And I've been wanting this one as well, too, right? Every great franchise has to go somewhere, Matt. And where is that place? Where is that place? You can't be great unless you go to this place, Matt. One of your favorite franchises went there.
Oh, to space.
You got to go to space, Matt, right? So you got to go to space.
With the family.
But I feel like it's right there for us, right? There's nothing that we've explored Hollow Earth now for 2 movies, right? We're good in Hollow Earth. We now have the crystals. We now have Mothra back. The next logical place is to go to space and give us Space Godzilla.
Is there a Space Godzilla?
We have the essence of Mothra. Yes, there is, buddy. You need to go check it out. Ernesto, you need to go check it out. It's the 21st movie in the franchise, Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, 1994. You get a little bit of a black hole, some essence of Mothra. Yes, you heard that right. Essence of Mothra, and a little bit of Godzilla DNA from one of Matt's favorites, Biolante. You get Space Godzilla. That is clearly where we need to go now. I was like, the crystals are there, and there's little part of me being humorous there, but also there is another part. Like, I don't think you introduced the crystals and everything else. The crystals played a big part in this movie. They weren't really talked about, but you constantly saw crystals. Like, they were constantly in your face. I think eventually they're laying the framework if they decide to go that route. They might not.
So I
think they laid the framework.
I need you to kind of break this down for me. So I have 2 questions. What is the significance of Mothra, and what and the crystals? Like, why are those 2 things really important in this monster universe?
So the crystals are probably less important, except for the fact that in the design of Space Godzilla, he has crystals coming out of his shoulders. So that's kind of where the crystal thing comes from. Mothra, her and Godzilla have this relationship. It's been alluded to before. Nobody really knows how it works. Boyfriend, girlfriend, soulmate. Nobody really knows what it is, but they have this relationship. They can fight much like a couple. They fight. There's been movies where they've been against each other, but they kind of always come back and they kind of have each other's back. She is basically she is, for lack of a better term, the Godzilla whisperer. So if Jaya's character is the one that's the Kong whisperer, Mothra is the one who kind of brings peace and tranquility, kind of a balance to everything.
She's the yin to his yang.
Mothra brings the balance to Godzilla and the rest of the Titan story.
Got it. Okay.
So the small girl, what was her name again? The
Jaya.
Jaya, yeah.
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I believe it's Jaya.
But she acted, because I've seen quite a few Godzilla movies because of you. And so
You're welcome, by the way.
Thank you. So what I gathered, she kind of acted as like one of the twins, or like a figure that would transform. For what in this movie, she was, because she was the last person of that tribe from Skull Island to be able to unlock her, and then all of a sudden she feels like that she has the essence of Mothra in her. Like for like I was a little bit confused. Like how was she able to get to Egypt? Like did Mothra carry her over there, or she just appeared?
There's not such a clear line there. And again, too, Matt, right? That's like I said earlier. There were in this movie. There were some things that were not explained, but yeah, my assumption would be she flew on Mothra's back as the twins used to. But I don't know for sure. Because if going back right to when Mothra first appeared in this legendary franchise in King of the Monsters, you had, and I don't remember the character's name, but you had the girl who was a descendant of the twins.
Right.
And she's the one that brings Mothra out of the waterfall. That character apparently isn't around anymore. So I don't know how Jaya's character comes into the mix there, except for the fact that, she can speak to the Titans. So maybe they just figured since she can speak to one Titan, she can speak to them all.
At this point, sure, why not?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, I'm fine with that. Like, at this point, why not? It's fun.
Also, another moment where I was like, sure, why not, is when they were like the zero gravity fight that they had. I was like, they're just flopping around, and it's like, yeah, why not?
Why not?
They're just like flailing and then like trying to hit each other, and I think it was funny because earlier on there were rumors that this was going to be like Son of Kong in a way, and I guess those rumors kind of got lost in what this story was. In a way, this was kind of like Kong being a father figure caring about another ape, or I guess it would be ape. Like kind of taking him under his wing. He was protecting him, and Mini Kong was helping protect him as well, especially for the final battle when he was able to take his axe over down to the portal and kind of hand it to him. So and again, I think what I give this movie a lot of credit for is the visual storytelling. When the humans were not involved or trying to explain to the audience what was going on, the rest of the movie was done very well to kind of visually show us what's going on. And that also just proves like we're not idiots. You could have a movie that didn't have the humans at all, and we could have told what was going on in most of what that movie was doing. And I think that was for me, that was a big step up from what Godzilla versus Kong was. Because there were a lot of moments where we were actually following the Titans, not following the humans to get to the Titans.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments is at the very end when they're fighting the Scar King and he gets his little shard thing and it breaks, and when Shimu like freezes him, and then Godzilla picks him up and you see his little eye, and then he just literally like blasts him into a million pieces by smashing him on the ground. Like me and my son are like, okay, Kong, he's dead. We get it. He's gone now. Like I think he's done.
What do you think of the pink Godzilla, as some people have said, Barbenheimer Godzilla?
I wasn't so there's I wasn't crazy. So I was slightly off. Going in, I said I thought that when he was pink, that something had control of him. That was a little off. Basically, he just absorbed Tiamat, and that's why he turned pink. So I guess something was sort of in control of him. It was all right. It didn't matter. Like once we got going into the movie, I didn't even care that he was pink anymore. From what I understand, though, a little bit of the theory behind it was they wanted to make him similar. They wanted to make him similar to the Godzilla design from Godzilla 2000. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see that now. And then also it was, I'm not sure if it was Wingard, but somebody also said that it was a sort of like a nod to one of the Dragon Ball Z characters. Like
not
Goku. Maybe it was Goku. I don't know. But yeah. So as long as they had their reason for it, like I said, after a while, again, too, if you just throw a monster fight out there and just a good enough monster fight, I'm distracted. I don't care if he's pink. I don't care if he's not the right size. Like if you do a good movie and you do a Godzilla movie, those things are going to get lost on me after a while. I'm not going to worry about them.
Yeah, it's like I told you. Like I didn't even like when you mentioned the size difference. I'll go like, oh shit! Like I didn't even think about that. Because you just, it's kind of, I guess for me that gets lost in like the suspension of disbelief. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things. Like, okay, well, maybe he can shrink. I don't know.
But that's it, Ernesto. Like that's it. Just have fun with it. Like
exactly.
That's the whole purpose of a Godzilla movie. Like and again, I hate to keep drawing the comparison to -1, but -1 was well done. It was you know what I mean. I loved it, and it was this serious telling of the story. But we just it's giant nuclear monsters. It should be fun.
Yeah, we can have both. We can have both things.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, as Todd, he texted me. He gave me his brief review. Like he said, it was a lot of fun. Godzilla fans eating well these last couple of months.
Dude,
they sure will.
So let me tell you something. It is wild to me that especially as a huge Godzilla fan, like to think that 4 months ago I sat and watched -1, and it was this great. It was a fresh take. It was a different retelling of a story, and just to see the success that had, to see it win an Oscar, and to know 4 months later. So 4 months ago, I went and watched a Godzilla movie with my son, and 4 months later, we're back in the movie theater watching this one, and to just see the success and the popularity. Which also, I know, Matt, sometimes I feel like you might be up on this stuff, but is this right? So I was looking this up. Godzilla Minus, which I guess makes sense if it was wasn't released as in many theaters, but I saw that Godzilla -1, their gross revenue was 112 million.
Look that up right now.
I'll tell you right now.
Which is wild to me when you think that this movie is already at 200 million worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this movie was very. Let's see. Godzilla -1 opened domestically here in the U.S. to 11 million. It overall it had 56 million domestically, 58 million internationally, and 114.8 million worldwide. Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, I think part of it going over 100 million was attributed to everyone going to the theater. I mean, it didn't even hit international, but it matched. Like people in the U.S. was half of its total gross, and I think that's in 1 week. And I think that was it was supposed to be in the theater for only 1 week. I think it was only supposed to be a limited release. So I don't know if they're looking to get a major profit out of it. But I mean, its mass popularity definitely drove people to the theater. That you have to see this on the big screen because of how great this movie was. I'm not too surprised by it, honestly. I guess given in Toho standards, like passing $100 million is actually
great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I don't think they've ever hit that bar before, considering that the budget for this movie was incredibly low. But then going back to Godzilla X Kong, I mean, wow, people came out to support.
In droves. I mean, this again too, right? This I think it was a budget of 135 million on this movie, and they're already over the 200 million mark. They're opening
in the first week,
80 million. Yeah, it's wild how well it's done. And don't get me wrong, I don't know if it does as well if we don't have the momentum coming off of, which I do also believe that's why they moved up the release
of
Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla and Kong, because I think they wanted to piggyback off of the success of -1. So I think that tidal wave actually, helped them to an even bigger box office because let's be honest, it wasn't like we've talked about this at length already, right? It wasn't like Godzilla versus Kong was a barn burner that was going to make people rush back to the theater. So I think they -1 probably helped. I think this movie would have done well regardless. But -1 helped it. And boy, if it doesn't say, or if that's not an indictment on there's a market for this, I don't know what is. I mean, in 4 months, these two movies have just made bank.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
for their respective studios.
And it's kind of sad for when you look at Godzilla versus.
Some people in Warner Brothers are taking a big breath right now.
Damn it!
It ain't been so good lately.
You make a really good point because technically speaking, like Godzilla versus Kong, because they released it in the way that it did in 2021 in the midst of the pandemic, one of the first big movies to come out in the theater, but you could also watch that movie at home. It opened to $31 million.
Yeah, right, 31. Yeah.
And then overall, worldwide, it hit $470 million worldwide. So I guess that proved that there was a hunger for it, but it probably came over time. 100 of that was domestically, 369 of that was internationally. So then you get 470 total. So like that probably gave them, okay, this movie is close to $500 million. In the midst of the pandemic, I think we have an audience here. And, 2.5 years later, we get Godzilla x Kong, and it delivered on just giving us monster mashing. And in 1 week, and the time of this recording, it's what's today's date? April 5th. So 1 week since its release, it's almost halfway to the last movie's total worldwide gross.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to say that there is a need and there was a hunger for this type of movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it is only behind, which is still kind of crazy. But again, too, I think people were starved for it at the time, and there was a lot of hype going in. But as far as the legendary MonsterVerse, it is only behind the original Godzilla, the 2014 one, which I think grossed $93 million in their first weekend. But yeah, I mean, this is a great sign because again, too, right? You could have maybe coming off of the success of -1, maybe there could have been a little Godzilla fatigue. It was the exact opposite, which is fantastic. To me, it's fantastic news.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy to think that, this movie came out in March of 21, and then comparing it to Ghostbusters, which came out November of 21. Ghostbusters, a sequel to that, came out just a week before Godzilla x Kong, and look at those numbers and how it's not even it took a 65% hit from its first week to its second week, and Godzilla x Kong took all of that box office money and was like, nah, we're ruling the box office this week. We knew it was gonna be number one. I didn't think it was gonna murder Ghostbusters into it. And I think what didn't help Ghostbusters was that it didn't have an overly positive word of mouth. So the people who were going in there the first week were definitely the fans, and then people who were skeptical was like, oh, I maybe want to see Ghostbusters, but then I heard it wasn't great, but then Godzilla's coming out next week, and maybe I'll just watch that instead and wait for Ghostbusters to be at home. So like the fact that Godzilla moved up its release date to be like right after Ghostbusters was not a good move. Well, great move for Godzilla, not a good move. Not. There was Ghostbusters is not.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot Ghostbusters could do once they were like, oh, we're moving up. They had already their date set. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think, right, Ernesto, you have kids. You said you went to see it with your kids. I think one thing that's really cool about this, and I even had mentioned this to my son. So, right, I was a kid. I grew up watching Godzilla movies. I loved it. I kind of passed that down to my son. And then they'll probably at some point, right, the MonsterVerse will settle down and there won't be Godzilla movies for a while. And by that time, Ernesto, our kids, by the time it pumps back up again, our kids will probably have kids and then a whole new generation. So I love that Godzilla is generational. And it can be more than a father-son thing. It could be, anybody can get in on it. But I think it's especially cool from, they're giant nuclear monsters. It's very cool for the father-son thing to keep passing through each generation.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully it's something that is not over the top, like you know, whether it's over the top with the gore or just like, you know, sometimes these monster movies or like these thrillers, they can just be like overly sexually suggestive, and just the fact that they're able to tame the story just around these monsters so that yes, it can be something that is not necessarily for little kids, but like those older kids and up, and pretty much anybody up you can take them to enjoy this film. And I think and I think that's part of why it has such success, is because it caters to such a broad audience.
Yeah. On that note, I don't know how it was for you guys, but when you went to see it, how were your previews? Because all of the previews that were before when I saw it were just not. I was like, they do realize that kids are coming to this movie. Like, there were all these dark for all these dark movies, and I was like, oh, this is a choice. I get it, but I was like, wow, they do realize that this is like a quasi kids movie. Like, let's use some common sense here. I just thought that was interesting.
To your point, I came in about halfway through the previews, more or less. So it was like, I probably saw about 3 previews and the movie started, but 2 out of the 3 were horror movies.
Yeah, I didn't see any previews.
Did you see that? Hey, did you see that Planet of the Apes one?
Yes, that was the third one.
Oh boy, yeah. Oh boy.
See that? Oh no, that movie's gonna be incredible. Like,
yeah, it is. Ernesto.
See, but those movies are like, that's like a next step up. They're way more than just CGI monsters smashing each other.
So not to digress too much here, but Cornelius, dude, if you're a fan of the original, they did such a good job with his voice. I was like, oh my God, that actually sounds like Cornelius from like the 70s and the 80s. Like, such a good job. Oh yeah, I was like, oh, this is good. That set me up for success.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that set me. I was like, all right, this is the I just got the preview for Planet of the Apes, and this Godzilla movie is gonna be fantastic. Like,
they already set you on a high, get you that good preview right before the movie started.
Yeah, I was like, this is gonna be a good night.
Also, it was a no-brainer, but like, you're about to go see Godzilla X Kong, and then the last trailer before the movie starts is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's like, you're tailoring to the same audience who's gonna go see that,
doing
for sure. Yeah, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. So, Todd, with that, your final thoughts on the film?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great testament to the Godzilla character and the drawing power that it has. Again, we've talked a lot about the last 4 months with -1 and this movie. It was, again, I laughed. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. I got all the monster fights that I wanted. It really kind of honestly restored my hope and my faith in the direction that the films are going in. Not that I didn't like Kong versus Godzilla, but I wasn't crazy about it. So this was a much stronger addition to the franchise, and I think they're stepping in the right direction. I think Adam Wingard did a great job. I think he stayed true to, again, some of those Easter egg type things, bringing Godzilla's history, which again, right, made King of the Monsters so successful. So I thought they did a really good job. Again, we talked about the human element, because again, I'll say it all the time, all I need is monster fights. But again, you do need you need humans there to showcase the impact of the monster's actions. So I thought they did a good job. We talked as well about Dan Stevens being a great addition to the cast, his interactions with Brian Henry. So overall, it was a really good time. I laughed a lot. It was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to see where they go from here. Hey, like I said, you got crystals, you got Mothra. It's space, man. Space.
So
sorry.
Out of 5, what is your rating out of 5 stars?
I will give it. I don't know what my scale necessarily would be comparatively. I will give it. I'll give it a 4.
4 stars.
4. Okay.
Yeah. I felt they checked a lot of the boxes for a Godzilla movie. I thought they checked a lot of the boxes.
Very quickly, I forgot to ask, how do you think Monarch kind of fell into all of this? Like, did you like the way that they used Monarch? I know it was brief because we mainly were focusing on like our main core group here, but like as a whole, because like even like Monarch had their own school and different campuses.
I'll tell you what, I actually liked the use of Monarch because I felt like, in a very weird way, we moved away from it in Kong versus Godzilla with Apex and no explanation really of Apex, I'm very glad that we kind of reestablished Monarch, but from an arm's length and not, we didn't get, it wasn't overly Monarch heavy, but just that they exist. They're doing the work. They're keeping track, and yeah, I thought they did a good job of reestablishing Monarch actually.
Okay, Ernesto, your final thoughts on the film?
I mean, I thought it was a good time. I came in, my kids, we sat down, we laughed. There were so many fun moments that we were able to connect to. Like, there weren't points where we were just sitting around bored. Like, we sat, we had a good time. Like, it was fun. The monster fights were fun. I mean, some of the fight scenes were actually pretty long. Like, they weren't just like 1-2 hits and then we're done. Like, you actually got a pretty decent fight scene through. I mean, all of them. I mean, the Scar King one was pretty significant with him and the Scar King down in Hollow Earth. I thought that was a great one. Like little baby Kong helping him out from here and there. I thought he was a great little addition. He was a great addition to the team. We didn't dwell on Godzilla and Kong fighting. Like, it was like a quick 1-2. We got the message. Godzilla wins. Like, we get it. Like, he gave him the 1-2 combo, and he was like, "Come on, like, why are you here?"
How many times I gotta stomp on your chest?
Yeah. Like,
well, I thought it was,
last time.
I thought it was also good too because within the story they established is that Kong's on Hollow Earth and Godzilla's up in Earth, so like they're not going to fight each other, but if they get near each other, Godzilla will go after him, and not but 2 seconds after.
As I said, my man flew across the Mediterranean.
Yeah. Put on those boosters. And
he's like, son of a bitch.
Huh? Kong? All right.
And kind of just to piggyback what Todd said, just also the human element. Dan Stevens was a fantastic addition. I felt like he kind of shined a little bit more in this movie than in the previous one. Same thing with Brian Tyree Henry. And something that just really just called out to me was the nonverbal communication between the monsters. Like, there was no physical talking. A lot of it was just kind of done through their interactions with each other and kind of just like what was happening in the scene. It was all nonverbal, and I don't know. I don't know why I like that. I thought it was something different. Instead of like trying to make up these like weird monster languages that they happen to know with each other, it was a creative way for us all to kind of all be on board, and we all kind of knew what was happening without having it to be overly explained to us. So as far as the storytelling aspect, I thought that was very positive.
Todd, correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't in Godzilla movies in the past, like when you see them communicating, they have subtitles in the bottom of the screen?
well, most of them are subtitled. There is
That's
one guy. You're catching me cold here. I can't remember which one it is, but there's one Godzilla movie where Anguirus and Godzilla have thought bubbles.
Yes,
I think it's something that should come back. But yes. I thought to that point though, Ernesto, the dialogue, it was the right mix. Didn't need to be too much. It wasn't too little, and it wasn't too
correct. But as far as my scoring, I'll go 4. I'm gonna meet you, Todd, at 4. I think your hypeness is really like, I think you've upped me a little bit more. Well, it's so helpful when you have somebody who's so knowledgeable about it, and they can give you get better context. So then you go, oh, okay, well, that does make sense now. Okay, I get that now. So I think that's great. So I'm going to meet you. I'm going to go 4 stars.
Yeah, and as far as my final thoughts, it was just a lot of fun. Like that's the movie I wanted to go into. I wanted to go into and be like, this movie was a good time. This movie was wild. They gave you monster fights. They gave you it in Egypt. They gave you it in Brazil. They gave you it in Zero Gravity. They gave you it in the jungle. They gave you it in the streets. Like, it was all over this movie, and I thought it was fun. I thought it was a really good time. Damn it!
I'm back. Monarch was calling me on the other line.
Damn, we thought we lost. I even stopped the recording for a second. Yeah. All right, we're just gonna roll with it then.
There's an issue at Outpost 52 and Monarch. I'd say, hey guys, I'm in the middle of a podcast. I'll deal with the monster.
I like how you're still holding the Sharpie the whole
Yeah,
time.
the whole time he did.
He's got a Sharpie. He's writing his notes down. I forgot what I was saying. I loved that they had so many fights. I thought Dan Stevens, to you guys' point, was a great addition to the film, and he gave this energy to it.
Yes.
That's kind of like, this movie is ridiculous, and then here's this character who is also kind of ridiculous. And I think that energy kind of helped this movie gone forward, where like Brian Tyree Henry was more, like you said, the conspiracy theory, and then you have Rebecca Hall's character, who is just like the leader of Monarch, kind of our straight man here, and like she had to, like, she was really focused on what was happening, but then everyone else wasn't really treating this movie very seriously. And so, like, yeah, I thought it was a good balance between our main characters. I liked all the fights we had. I thought Mini Kong was also a great addition, and by the end of it, Kong is, I guess, the new emperor. I guess, right? He's the leader of the new. Is he the new empire?
Well, he kind of rules
felt
Hollow
like he
Earth.
gave it to Baby Kong.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of felt like you brought Baby Kong and be like, here, you deal with these orangutans. I'm going back to.
I'm gonna take care of the rest of Hollow Earth.
Yeah, I'm going back to Hollow Earth.
Yeah, I guess in a way, like, where does Kong go from here? Because in a way, if they really wanted to end his character, this seems like a good stopping point. Like, you take him at a point where he was lonely, and then now he's I got a family-ish now. I got people.
I don't think they're gonna stop. I actually think
they're not gonna stop.
I actually think we're gonna get a Kong movie. I could
like
be
a
wrong,
solo Kong movie.
Yeah, I feel like that.
I don't think you can go back to the solos anymore. We just got to keep. What I also liked about this movie is that they kept up in the ante.
You don't have to convince me who the star is. I know the star is Godzilla, but apparently, they want to keep pushing Kong.
Well, I feel like that. I feel like you had like Godzilla, who's maybe a primary focus in Godzilla versus Kong. I don't know for sure. Kong was definitely it. But then if we're gonna get another movie, to your point, Godzilla needs to be the focus in this next movie. Like, whether Kong is has just as much screen time as Godzilla did in this movie. Like, I think we need to have more screen time for Godzilla in the next movie. And if we go to space, so be it.
Now, if I have
go to space.
Hey, listen, what's better than one Godzilla? Two Godzilla. We need Godzilla and space Godzilla.
Now, I haven't seen Godzilla versus Kong in a while. Whose movie was that more? Was that more of a Godzilla movie, or was that more of a Kong movie?
I felt that one was more of a Kong movie too. I honestly feel like the last two have been to reestablish Kong in the universe.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Godzilla. Obviously, he was the King of Monsters. Obviously that was his movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think the next one needs to be more Godzilla focused at this point, because at the end of the day, he's just sleeping in the Coliseum.
He's just taking a nap. Tuckered out.
Nap time.
Little guy tuckered out.
When I saw that in the movie, I was like, we're in for a wild ride. He's literally sleeping in the Coliseum.
It's weird too, Matt, because I had somebody tell me that the Coliseum's not that big. So
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I see a giant Godzilla sleeping in that.
Must be pretty big.
I don't know. Never been. Yeah, never been. But
yeah. I mean, I think if anything, this proves that the Coliseum is pretty big. If Godzilla can just circle up in it and call it a bed.
Yeah. Hey, guys, it's been a pleasure, but I want to tell you two things. Number one, my battery's gonna die, so I don't want you to lose me again. And number two, I got a Godzilla Jr. here who's giving me the wrap it up sign. So what else you got for me before I get out of here?
Well, I mean, that's as far as my score. I'm gonna meet you guys there. It's a 4 out of 5 stars. But yeah, we're also wrapping up here. Todd, thank you for joining us and just talking about Godzilla x Kong.
Listen, I could talk about Godzilla anytime. It's fun. I could also make fun of you anytime. So Ernesto, it has been a pleasure. Yes. I don't care what Matt says about you. You clearly carry this show. Matt, you do work, Matt.
A little bit.
Do work. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Well, we loved having you on.
I know you have your podcast, random thoughts and best regards. If they want to listen to what you have to say, where can they find you there?
They can find me on anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Same like you guys, Spotify, Apple, Google. Listen to them all. There's 4 seasons. I think about 80 episodes in the library. There'll be some new episodes coming up probably in the summertime-ish. But yep, go give it a listen. They're there, and yep, give this show a listen.
Yeah, I've listened to him. Pretty good. What I have to say.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, he has a lot of interesting to say. It is indeed random thoughts.
It is random.
It is random thoughts, and
But
I
if
do
you know
appreciate
me,
that.
Matt, I'm random. So
Makes
checks
sense.
out.
But yeah, Ernesto, quickly tell our lovely listener what they can look forward to next week.
All right, next week we are going to be reviewing Dev Patel's new movie, Monkey Man, his directorial debut. Got a standing ovation at South by Southwest. I'm really excited to talk to this movie, Matt. I've already seen it, and I think we gotta have a great review next week. I can't wait to dive into this.
You guys are really into like apes and stuff.
Huh? This is pretty much like Dev Patel's John Wick.
Yeah. And if you want more from us, you can always follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Instagram and Threads page at Box Office_Bingers. All of the fun continues over on our social media page. So if you're not following those, you should, because it's a good time. And if you're not following, and now you should be following Todd's podcast, Random Thoughts and Best Regards, you should also be doing that as well wherever you listen to podcasts. Well, I thank each and every one of you for listening to just talk about movies. Really do appreciate it. We have a lot of fun doing. Todd, this was a blast. You're always welcome back on.
It was a
I
lot
would
of
love
fun.
to have you back on man, anytime.
We'll do. It was fun, guys.
If you that's all we have the show for you out this week. Thank you for listening, and for that I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Ernesto Santos. See ya.